The bases dropped just a little bit later than normal. A few hours give or take and a few extra minutes. What's that really mean on a Wednesday when it's an overreaction Wednesday? And there's a lot of reactions. There's a whole lot of reactions. There's a whole lot to talk about, and I feel like I've been talking about it all day because I have. So I'm going to try not to cover the same ground, but we have some different folks listening and watching than we've had on 92.9 The Game today and on Stoppage Time today. Feel free, ask whatever you want, throw whatever questions you want in Twitch, throw whatever questions you want into Twitter at SoccerDownHere. Send us an email, soccerdownhere@gmail.com. But Twitch is probably one of the easiest things. It's created a bit of a chat room. Maybe the chat room is needed for some folks after last night. Atlanta United is out of the MLS's back tournament after a poor performance, maybe the worst 45 minutes that I've seen the team play. The opening 45 was awful, and the second 45 was better. Didn't matter. You were already down a goal, you never found one, and you are going home. Lots of takes on why you are going home, why that half was poor, why this tournament was what it was. That's just where you're at. So, whatever you guys want to get into, we're going to try to get into it. We're going to go all the way up until, who do we have at 8 o'clock, John?
Oh, you had to ask me that.
I know.
Let's see. 8 o'clock is Red Bull Cincinnati, the other part of Group E.
Okay. What are the numbers on that one? I'm just curious.
Okay, so as we look into that particular tournament, because we also have action going on right now in the USL Championship off of my left shoulder, FC Cincinnati plus 313,
Ooh.
Red Bulls minus 101, and your draw option is at plus 223. Your nightcap at MLS is back after dark is Colorado and Minnesota. Colorado's at plus 198 in your composite from our friends at Odds Portal. Minnesota United plus 123, and your draw option is at plus 261.
I would really like to make it for that nightcap. I'm going to pretty much promise you now that it's not going to happen. It's been a long day.
Yeah.
It's been a long night last night. Got out of the stadium. What time did we go off the air? Probably about 11:15. 11:30 or so. Had some packing up to do because we're not going back anytime soon. And started to head home. And it was just a bad night. Just a bad night. There's just no way around it. It's not what this club expects. It's not what this club has set as an expectation. JPV to 81 on Twitch. Hey, what's up? We will be in the evenings tonight, tomorrow, and then Friday we won't have a normal show. Friday night we're going to do a watch-along of Atlanta United 2 and Charleston. So it will be a little bit different format. And for those of you who don't join us on Twitch but download the podcast to listen live on the app, that Friday night watch-along will only be on Twitch. So twitch.tv/soccerdownhere. Subscribe, get the notifications, etc., etc. And that's what Friday will be. Tomorrow will be a normal show, this time 6 to 8. And that's why everything's a little crazy right now. It's all good.
Well,
we're figuring it out.
You're doing some stuff in the middays. How's the middays treating you?
It was fun. I mean, it would have been more fun if it had something more fun to talk about today. But it kind of felt like the Spanish Inquisition at times because
what a show.
Yeah, it's rough. It was a lot of fun hanging out with Andy Bunker and talking all sports, soccer included, as part of the midday show at 92.9. Thanks for everybody who listened. I know a lot of our SDH listeners were hanging out on 92.9 and on radio.com as well. So it was fun. It would have been a whole lot more fun if we were coming off of a win. And I want to hear what you guys think. I want to hear your takes. We heard a lot on Stoppage Time today. I heard a lot on my Twitter during the game yesterday and afterwards. I'd love to hear what you guys think, maybe with a little more time, about how things went last night and what you want to see different. Because I think there's some open-ended questions about what needs to be done. I don't think it's an easy fix. I don't think it is one thing to fix. I don't think it's a major things to fix. I think it's lots of little things. I do. I don't think that this team has forgotten how to play. I don't think this team has forgotten how to soccer. I don't think this team has forgotten how to build a team. The things that we talked about at the beginning of the season and the way that they've built the team, I still feel and I still believe. I do think things have gotten completely out of whack on the field right now, and I don't think it is an easy solution. So I do want to push back on one thing that I've seen far too often. There has been a very heavy, I think, push to say that, it doesn't matter if you have Joseph Martinez. That's not true. I mean, come on, we know better than that. Does it fix everything? No, it does not. Because you've given up goals in bad moments that have nothing to do with your forward. But to say that it doesn't matter if you have Joseph Martinez, if anything, I think what we've learned is that it does matter, and it affects the way that this team plays as a whole, and you want him back. Period. That's a fact. There's nothing wrong with that. That's not the only solution to making things better, though. I hope that there is an understanding as you go and as we go and as we get past the emotion of anger and disappointment and frustration that there's rarely little about this game that is solved with one formation change, one lineup change, one instruction. Because this is a game where all the pieces have to fit. They have to fit together. They have to work together. And when they do, beautiful things can happen. And it can happen in a lot of different ways. When they don't, you see a performance like you did in the first 45 yesterday, which I asked Mike on air today on 92.9, what was the oh no moment in the tournament for him? And he talked about the Frankie Amaya goal. I chalked that up to the red card. I wasn't happy about it, but I understood why it happened. My oh no was the lack of a response to the goal against Columbus. That was where I was, for the first time, truly and utterly worried about this team getting through. And worried about the way they've been playing. I thought they could play through it. I was worried when there wasn't a response to that goal. That made it look like something was wrong. Response finally came at halftime. Shouldn't take that long. Not from a team of this caliber and not from a team with this much experience of winning. That was what scared me. That can't happen again.
For me, taking that particular moment and the lack of a response in the first half after that, it looked to me like there were players who were pressing. And then there were also moments where you had players who looked like they didn't want to mess up anymore, if that makes any sense.
Those are two very different things. And I want to know what you saw in the first half, because I didn't see both of those.
Well, I mean, for me, just the example of, it looked like for me, PT and Bello looked like when George Bello could get free on the left, and this might have also played into the second half as well, where Bello looked like he was trying too hard, and there was one decision where he decided to go for the cutback pass instead of working his way directly to the side for, I think Emerson Heineman was open. I think this was in the area, if I remember correctly.
That's second half.
Second half, yeah. They were going left or right. So they had hemmed in Bello in the first half, and there were a couple of instances in the first half where he was near side, and it looked like he might have been trying to press a little bit. Also, PT looked like he was trying to make things happen. And I think that after the goal, when they were down 1-0, that to me was the uh-oh moment. And it just looked like the offense was trying to, instead of be the free-flowing, organic thing that we see, and I give full credit to Columbus for having a stout defensive game plan and the way that they laid things out. But it just, to me, there were moments, and this might be more of a collective observation, where it seemed like there was just activity, but it wasn't going forward, if that makes any sense. It's like they were trying to probe, but they just kept probing and couldn't find anything. And so I think that for me, just philosophically, in the latter stages of the first half, it's like, all right, let's try to not go down 2 instead of just staying at 1. And that first 45 to me was just kind of like, it was just kind of there, really.
I didn't see it that way. The first half, I didn't get a sense of pressing at all. I got a sense, and when I say pressing, I'm not talking about a tactic. I'm talking about putting too much pressure on yourself and trying too hard.
And it might be pity it might have been pity where I was trying to think of things in the second half as well. Transferring my first half thoughts to the second half. So
I think they're two different things. I didn't see pressing in the first half. I saw a team that was tentative. I saw a team that played scared.
Yeah.
I do push back on the notion that there was a lack of effort. I don't think it was an effort thing. I think it was a fear, a tentativeness.
I think they were trying to. For me, it just seemed like it wasn't. And if I said it was a lack of effort, that's not what.
No, you didn't. No, you didn't say that. Others, it's come up, and I don't think that's the case.
No, for me, I think that there just seemed to be that idea of the idea for me that they seem to be snake bit. It's like if you look back throughout the entire tournament, you're looking at a 4th-minute goal. You're looking at a red card. You're down 10. Cincinnati, the 10 men. Cincinnati doesn't want to play, and they want to have a kickabout and not really have any kind of action. And so you're already down 2 losses, both 1-0. And then you have that moment with Miles where Miles is trying to get in the way to clear the ball, and it deflects and it goes in. And so you have that collection of moments in your head if you're out there on the pitch. And I think that, to me, it just seemed like there was that notion of being snake bit and not wanting to make that next mistake. So you're down 2, so you still have a chance to do something.
No, that's not the way I saw it. Let me try to make it clear what I saw, and this is how I felt about it. And this is just my opinion. I thought that the team came out tentatively. They were getting the possession early on. They weren't able to do anything with it, and this is in the very early stages. As you got to about minute 10, 12, somewhere in that ballpark, after you had possession, you couldn't do anything with it. Columbus started to come into the game a bit, and Atlanta was tentative, was reluctant to try anything. I think George Bello was an example of that, where they defended him very tightly. They knew that he was a player who might be prone to that, and every time he was played on the left side, he went backwards. He was pressured quickly. He turned back. The goal is nothing about being snake bit. You gave up too much possession. You gave up. You dropped off too much. And that if there's a thing defensively that is more tactical that needs to be solved here, is you can't drop off so deep, and you can't concede possession in some of these spots. It was too easy for Columbus to do what they did. The shot could have found the back of the net without the deflection. The deflection makes it impossible to save. It does add an element of luck. The team had some bad luck in the tournament. That happens. It's part of soccer. You're going to have 3 games where there'll be lucky moments and unlucky moments. It felt like this time around, a little bit more on the unlucky side. That's not enough to decide this. It wasn't you got knocked out because of bad luck. I think where I had a question about what's going on here is after the goal, it never got out of first gear. Yeah. And that should have happened immediately. There should have been that gear to begin with. I do understand, you have a lot of respect for Columbus. You come in, you want to be responsible. It didn't look responsible, it looked tentative. You give up the goal, all bets are off. And the second half, all bets were off. Second half's a different conversation. First half, tentative, you give up the goal. After the goal, flat. And flat's a problem.
Yeah.
Flat's a problem when you're down 1-0.
No doubt.
And it wasn't until the very end of the first half that you started to get some more movement. And one thing that happened that, man, it needed to happen consistently in this match because it was on most of the night, was a run in behind the 2 central midfielders. Darlington Nagbe and Artur are not defensively minded midfielders. One time they tried to exploit it. Heineman made a run in behind, and Pity Martinez slipped it between the 2 and put Heineman into a good spot. One time. That should have been happening consistently. That's a problem. Second half, John Gallagher brought the energy that was needed. Eric Remedi brought the energy that was needed. Everything did change after the halftime conversation. Mm-hmm. That's important because if the second half had been played out like the first half, played after the goal, I would have been even more worried. I'm worried. There's things that got to get fixed. You can't give up goals early consistently and win games. Period. Can't do it. You can't have these defensive breakdowns where the positioning all goes out the window. Can't happen. Can't have that. You've got to find a way to get in behind a back line. Period. And you can do it a bunch of different ways. You've got to find a better way to do it because you didn't do it consistently in this tournament. That has to change. These things have to change. You have to solve the lack of Joseph problem. You have to make the defense better. You have to settle on a midfield pairing. Or you have to look at options. This is the equivalent of Game 5 of the regular season.
Exactly.
That's another element, especially with the break. That makes it even harder to bring in Josetu, to bring in Castro, to bring in these new players who have not been with the team, who you're trying to get comfortable with this group when you haven't been able to do that in competitive action. There's a number of things that made this more difficult. For the anti-excuse crowd, I want to make this so clear. It's not about excuses. These things are real. These things are issues. These things contribute. It doesn't mean you can brush it off because it happened. Because other teams have dealt with things better. Other teams have incorporated new players better. Other teams have handled this situation better. This situation's still difficult. And it has made this more difficult. But you are where you are right now. You are not good enough to continue in the tournament. You are not good enough to move forward. And you have to solve some problems to get back to where you were. There was a question before the tournament that if Atlanta United went out in the group stage and didn't make it to the knockout round, would they be considered elite in the Eastern Conference? In my mind, no, they're not. You can't put them elite right now, not after the way they played. Can they get back there? Absolutely. They have the talent to do that. They're not there right now. Columbus is in there. Philadelphia, for me, is in there. Mm-hmm. Orlando's right behind it. Orlando, they win a knockout game. Then we're having a different conversation about Orlando City. New York City's out of that group now for me, too. Yep. So the Eastern Conference turned on its head a little bit. Toronto, I think, is still in the elite group. But it's changed. And it's like power rankings. It's going to change. But Atlanta's got to be better to get back to where they want to be. You heard the comments from Brad Kazan. You heard the comments from Brooks Lennon. You heard the comments from Frank DeBoer afterwards. Nobody's satisfied. Nobody's happy. Now what?
Yeah.
And the biggest problem is we don't know when we find out now what. And that's going to make this even more difficult because it's not like a normal season where you have a 3-game slump. Okay, you play your way through it. You solve it. You try things differently in games. You might have a cup game coming up where you can mix things around. All that's there. You don't have that. You don't know when you get to play another competitive game, period. You don't know when you get to play a friendly. You don't know when the next game's scheduled for. Yep. Those things are going to make this difficult. And I do think this upcoming transfer window is going to be one to keep an eye on from an Atlanta perspective because you're going to have some teams come calling about Atlanta players. You're going to have some potential additions that Atlanta's going to have to find a way, if they want to make it happen, how they do that. You know, they have roster limitations. They have cap limitations. Now you're in a different spot than you were coming in. Coming in, you might have felt better about the roster, better about your possible solutions to Joseph being injured, replacements, depth, etc. Now you've got questions. You have to. And now you're going to have a transfer window where maybe things change. We will see. But it's a time that Atlanta United's never been in as a club. And that's maybe part of the reaction to all of this, is that it was pretty good day one, and by the end of 2017, you could tell that something special was brewing. I don't know if people expected day one 2017 that a year later you'd have MLS Cup. That was probably a lofty expectation. But once you did, that then changed it even more. You didn't have what Minnesota went through in their early years. You didn't have what Orlando's gone through pretty much from day one. You didn't have what most teams go through and some rough times. Now you've got some rough times. You know, you have your top scorer injured. You're going to have some rough times. You have a lot of turnover in your roster. You're going to have some rough times. These things are real. So how do you handle it? That's what makes big clubs big clubs. They find a way to handle it. They don't let some rough times change who you are. And that's what Atlanta United can't do. So, ton of things to get into. Ton of questions on Twitch. I know we've got some tweets as well. Where do you want to start?
Let's go with the stuff that came post-game, and if it was something that was addressed in the full-time report, go ahead and let me know and do a quick recap, and I'll go to the next.
No, it's all good.
Okay. Well, I don't want to be redundant when it comes to what you're talking about.
I barely remember what I said this morning, let alone last night, so I might say it again. It's all good.
All right. So here's Tafka, and Tafka had a lot in the timeline during the match and after the match. So Tafka says, I better not hear a single platitude from Frank DeBoer or players after this game. 270 minutes and 0 goals. Absolutely pathetic display. FC Dallas and Nashville outperformed us in this tournament. This is not my Atlanta United. They are a shadow of their former selves. Our best shot on goal all tournament came from a backup center back.
A little bit of hyperbole there, don't you think? Tafka, I love your passion, man. I know you feel this intensely. I get it. But also, I want to make something clear, and this is not just to Tafka. I'm going to give you my opinion, period. When I tell you something on this show, when I tell you how I feel, it's how I feel. Doesn't make it the gospel, doesn't make it right, doesn't make it anything other than my opinion. I hope you know by this point that my opinion does not come off easily, does not come off half-cocked, does not come off to get attention. It's just my opinion. And there's been some things that have been either said or alluded to that I've taken a little personally and that I don't think are fair. I'm a commentator. I'm calling games live. I'm telling you how I feel during the game. Afterwards, I'm reacting to it. Do I get things wrong? Yeah, absolutely. Everybody does. No commentator's perfect. No commentator sees everything the way that it actually was. People have different opinions. It happens. It's okay. But there's nothing about me lying to you or me not admitting something. And I hope you guys understand that because, yeah, I do take that personally. I'll tell you this, too. And last night's a prime example. Mike and I have never been told what to say by the club. Not one time. Ever. No instruction last night on the social media piece that went out on their social media network. Not what went out on the air on 92.9. On their piece. Not one instruction on what to say. We have freedom to say how we feel about these games and these teams. And we take that very seriously. We don't fire off things half-cocked. We don't come off out of pure, strict emotion. We take that responsibility very seriously. So I hope you understand that when I'm talking soccer with you, either on a 92.9 platform, on a Soccer Down Here platform, on an Atlanta United platform, I'm giving you my opinion. And I'm not hiding anything. And I'm not lying to you about anything. And I'm definitely not saying something for effect. I'm telling you how I feel. If you disagree, that's completely fine. That's soccer. It's no fun if everybody agrees about every single thing. Then every team would play the same way. But just because I say something that you disagree with doesn't mean I'm not admitting something or I'm lying to you or I'm hiding something or whatever. Please understand that. Because I do take that personally. I think I've earned that from you guys who listen, that I'm going to be real with you. And no, I don't jump to emotional responses typically because I've been involved in a team and I've been involved in organizations and I understand that processes take time. And when you jump to things emotionally, you can do more damage than good. So that's where I come from on it. And when we disagree, we disagree. It's completely cool, but it doesn't have to get personal. And it doesn't have to get to where integrity is questioned. Because I don't think that's fair. So the emotional responses are great. There's no problem with that. But it's not personal. And I hope that's understood.
For me, when it comes to doing this show or anything else that we do here at the network, I've said it before, and I will continue to say it. I'm learning about the game as we go, and for me, this is my daily PhD class. And for me, it's where I'm learning about the game. I'm learning about it from everyone who interacts with us and with their opinions, and I'm learning about it from you and from Nick and from Jared and from Jess and from everyone who's attached to the network, and getting all these different opinions. And so, for me, I will admit that my opinions are probably a little bit more reserved when it comes to what I see, but at the same time, I'm not going to sit here and tell you something for effect because I don't have the knowledge base to do that. I can't just sit here and, come up with a paragraph about something and put it out there, because I'm not that smart to send somebody down a road that's going to, that makes you think one thing when I really think something else. I'm a very linear person, and I am very two-dimensional when it comes to my thought patterns. For me, it is a straight road, and that's how I've always been when it comes to how I've been on this show. So for me, it's a combination of walking with everybody and learning all at the same time. I've always thought of this as that two-way street, that two-lane road, but there are a lot more lanes in it than just the two. And so that's I don't have the mental wherewithal to sit there and try to spin something out there and go, well, yeah, this is what I'm going to say, but think about something else. And so I just wanted to put that out there as well.
I don't have the acting ability.
Yeah,
I'm just going to be straight up with you. Like, I play the Stephen A. Smith clips on here because I think they're hilarious. I wish I could do that. That's not me. I can't do it. I'm going to be real. I'm just going to tell you how I feel, and where we disagree, we disagree. It's all good. I mean, you go ask 20 people about who is a better manager, Jurgen Klopp or Pep Guardiola, and you're going to get a fight, and that's fine. That's what the game is about. This game, I think, is the most difficult to quantify because in some ways it's incredibly simple because it's who scores more goals. You don't have any real complicated things going on with how the game is decided. But how you get to that point is very complicated because you can get there playing defensively, you can get there with a lot of possession, you can get there playing counterattacking, you can get there playing a press, you can get there with 3 center backs, you can get there with 2, you can get there by doing all the things that make no sense, like the second half where John Gallagher's playing center back, but not, and bombing forward, and that was maybe one of the best things you did offensively all tournament. So that's the thing about this game. That's what I love about it. But when things get emotional and when things get like this, where it's rough and the team's not playing well or whatever, because it happens with the league, it happens with the U.S. men's national team, it happens with the U.S. women's national team. It's part of the game. This game inspires emotion and it's wonderful. It doesn't have to get personal. It doesn't have to get to where you start questioning people's integrity. And that's a little disappointing that happens from time to time. And what I've found is usually it happens after a loss, and it doesn't have to be that way. I think we have enough of a two-way street here where, we do this. Look, I'll be perfectly honest with you. I would have loved to have just had some dinner and went to sleep right now.
Yeah.
I would have absolutely loved to have come home, did stoppage time, and have a bite to eat, have a beer, and go to sleep. Because I'm on about 4 hours of sleep from last night. Because I get home, I can't go to sleep after a game like that.
Yep.
I had an early wake-up call this morning to go do a show that I had to do a lot of preparation for. And I'm beat. But I owe it to you guys. I have that responsibility. I can't ask you to listen when the team's playing well and ask you to listen when things are easy and then disappear. I can't do that. I can't ask you guys to take time out of your day and be part of the show and be part of what this is. And then when it's hard for me to do it, just say, oh, well, I got to go. I can't do that to y'all. That's not right. So I appreciate all you guys. That's why I'm here. I'm sorry if my voice is scattered. I'm sorry if I'm a little tired, but we're going to get through it. We're going to talk through it. We'll have some fun with it as best we can.
All right. So let me keep going back to the Twitter timeline here. And Chris Hutchison wants to know, how many yellow cards did we accumulate and where do we sit in that category?
Oh, man, a lot, but I don't remember off the top of my head. Let me see if I can pull that really fast for you and not bore you while I'm looking things up. Let's see if Who Scored has things updated. They've been a little bit weird with the tournament, so Last night, Timothy Ford had one of the best referee performances I've seen in a long time. I really thought in a game that had over 40 fouls, to manage it the way that he did, it never felt out of control. I thought he handled Franco Escobar with a lot of respect for the game and a lot of understanding of what was going on in that game. Some refs would have tossed him for the dissent. Franco put himself in a bad position, don't get me wrong. But Ford handled the game really, really well. And you get games with 40 fouls, a lot of times they don't have a flow or all to it. This did. So in this one, Robinson had a yellow, Escobar had a yellow. Previous game, of course, we know what happened with Mulraney. I think Escobar was on a yellow in that one, and Barco and Robinson, he picked up 2 in the tournament. And then in game 1, it was Escobar and Pitti who picked up yellows. Escobar did not play against Cincinnati in March. I don't think he got a yellow in the first half in Nashville because he was substituted at halftime, remember? And I think that's his 3 yellows for the season. So whenever it resumes, he's not being suspended for 3 straight yellows. Nobody's in that situation yet.
Turner Kirby, and there's more from Chris Hutchison as we go. Turner Kirby, I think Atlanta United Twitter is going to pass Braves Twitter in terms of on insanity before the season's over. That's a tough feat, but holy cow, some of the takes on here want me to pull my hair out. No, this team is not trash. They aren't punting the season. It's 3 losses after a 4-month break without your best player, and one of those came with 10 men for 2/3 of the game. But yes, keep telling me that you knew the team was going in the tank when they let Gressel go. Give, period, me, period, a freaking break, period. Am I disappointed in how this team performed? Absolutely. Do I think some things need to change? Probably. Does that mean that this team is garbage and isn't going anywhere as currently constructed? It shouldn't, but people seem to think so.
Yeah, I mean, that's legit. That's absolutely legit. It's look, we haven't had sports to talk about in a while. We haven't had a tournament to talk about. And maybe it's a little bit of amped up
anticipation, emotion.
Yeah, maybe
into this one direction.
Maybe that's it. It's all good. Don't overreact as best you can. It is an overreaction Wednesday, but try to keep it in check. There's a lot of things that need to be better. There's no question about it. But yeah, the team is not all of a sudden trash when it wasn't coming into the tournament. They're not handling things very well at the moment, and they've got to fix these things. And that's where you're at. And I do think there could be some changes by the time you play games because of a lot of reasons, not just because of 3 losses by 1-0, by a 1-0 scoreline. But you're going into a transfer window that's going to create opportunity. I think you're also going to have some opportunities to sell because there will be some clubs who will be interested. The one I'm really interested to see is what happens with Ezequiel Barco. Mm-hmm. And if Fiorentina, who has money to spend, decides to spend it here if they hit that price. I don't know if they will. Will a French club do it? I don't know. Will it take a little bit more time? Maybe. Diego Rossi's transfer could affect it as well because Rossi is being linked to Fiorentina and others. And I don't think Fiorentina would buy both, for example. So where the market is going to be an interesting question. But I do think there will be a market, and I think Atlanta United will potentially be involved in said market.
Chris Hutchison says that we have way too many guys accumulating unnecessary/stupid yellow cards. This is a sign of immaturity and a lack of on-field leadership to me. You don't lose LGP, Gressel, Parkhurst, and Nagby and not expect that to take a toll.
On-field leadership in that group is coming from LGP, at least in a vocal sense. It didn't really come as much from the others. And it was lacking yesterday, 100%. It was an issue, and it's something that needs to be addressed. I agree.
Kefsey, we're at the point where I clap in relief of Brad coming out to gather a long ball before I can panic. That's his job, and he's good at it. Maybe we need to have his media snippets pumped into earphones on the rest of the team's head until they score.
I was surprised a little bit at how blunt Brad was with some of the comments he made afterwards. I totally understand where he's coming from. I was a little surprised in. He didn't say it initially. He didn't say it exactly this way. I think some people took it this way, that he was questioning the effort of his teammates. I didn't really take that because I think it's more about mentality and urgency and not just effort. And there are differences. And I think the way the team played in the second half showed you that those things were there. They weren't there when they needed to be. So leadership's going to be a key. It's hard to come from a goalkeeper. I'm not dissing the hashtag GK Union, but when one of your most vocal players is your goalkeeper, that's not necessarily a great fit. You need somebody on the field to take that leadership on. And when Jeff Larinowitz isn't there, and this is one thing I think that Frank was saying, maybe I'm starting to understand Dutch brain translated to English. Because one thing that that Frank said about Jeff, I think it was mixed in with changing the tactics. I thought it was changing the attitude as much as anything. He said he wasn't able to do that with Jeff on the bench. And I'm echoing something that Daniel's saying on Twitch as well. We talked about it going into the match, and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe as we were talking through what we thought the lineup would be, that I thought Larinowitz would be in the lineup going into it. Yeah. And for the same reasons that Daniel's saying, for the same reasons that Doug said on Southern Fried Soccer, I think in some ways for what Frank said. And the question is, and you don't want to, if it is the fact that you don't think he is as good as the other players right now, or you don't think that he's as fit as the other players, or whatever. I don't know if you want to say that publicly about a player who means a lot to this club, but is he at the same level as Eric Remedi, Emerson Hyndman, Mo Adams, potentially Mateo Sosetu? I don't know. I think he's been good in this tournament. I think he's been important in this tournament, and it feels like every season we come in and we think, well, this is it for Jeff. This is the end of the road for him. He's not going to contribute as much this year, and he proves that he is as important as ever. Mm-hmm. And I think that's still the case. And I think he gives that midfield more definition, and he provides some of that leadership that is lacking. Sometimes when you're putting a lineup together, and we talked about this with not just picking the 11 best players and putting them on the field and then rearranging the shape to fit that. There are intangibles that go into picking a proper lineup. Some of it is the chemistry of how they fit together, but some of it is leadership. And sometimes you will take a player into the lineup that you know maybe there's a better player on the bench. Maybe there's a faster player here in this position. But you need their voice. You need their experience. You need them in that moment where you concede in the first half. I think that's something that needs to be considered here at this point, because that chemistry, that leadership, those intangibles were non-existent in the first half. And I think the lineup needs to reflect that going forward, because you need those elements for success.
FC Waffle says the managers made the team too predictable.
It's a little hard without Joseph, and I know we keep coming back to it, and I know that really bothers some people, but it's a simple fact. The guy's pretty good. And when you don't have him, things change. It's just a baseline. You do become more predictable without him, because you don't have that fear in the heart of the opposition that's going to create space for Pity Martinez. It's going to create space for Barco. You've heard every manager in the tournament talk about the respect they have for Atlanta United, and specifically Pity and Barco. However you feel about Pity Martinez and Ezequiel Barco, I think it's a pretty safe thing to say that they're good players. They're not park guys. They're not pickup guys. They're not Sunday League guys. These are talented players, and these are game changers. The problem is, isolated in the way that they've been, they can't do that. And when teams show that respect to them and play deeper and double team, it's very hard for them to do what they want to do, and they don't have that focal point in the attack. I thought Adam John could be that. He wasn't. I don't know if he was really given much of an opportunity to be last night, to be perfectly fair. I don't think he was really fed much. That's got to change. That's where some of this chemistry has to get better. But if it's not him, it's got to be somebody. It's got to be something. Because Pity and Barco can't beat everybody by themselves, no matter how good they are. Because teams can just sit and defend, take away the 1v1 opportunities, make them 1v2s, and you're stuck. You're just stuck. So that's got to change. And maybe that's the predictable element that Waffle's talking about. It very well could be, because that's the best thing you have at the moment. You got to find other things. You've got to get more from the wingbacks. We started to see Bello emerge, but he wasn't confident in the final third, and he's a teenager. It's to be understood.
Yep.
Brooks Lennon played really hard. The quality wasn't what it needed to be consistently. And you didn't get any help from the guys behind in the attack. You didn't get consistent involvement from Hindman, from Adams, from Remedi, from Lorenowitz, joining the attack to be that. So it became, can Pitti beat 2 or 3 people here? Can Barco beat 2 or 3 people or earn a free kick? That's what the attack turned into, and that's not going to win games in this league.
Caleb Cook, when we asked about people sending in their thoughts, Caleb just basically said, you don't want to know, besides I don't have enough characters, and all caps just isn't going to cut it.
Caleb's fired up, and Caleb has been consistently, even when things were good last year, Caleb was consistently not a fan of Frank DeBoer's tactics and style. I can respect the consistency. I disagree, and we've talked about it. Caleb and I have talked about it in person even at the Atlanta United 2 game. But he's been consistent. That's where maybe some of the things that have made my head spin a little bit today have been in that, we're not happy. And then, okay, we're happy and things are really good. And yeah, we got to give him credit. Now we're not happy again, and it's like the things that made us happy didn't happen, but they did happen.
Yeah.
That's the part that's a little unfair. So you can talk long-term about what you want this club to look like. I think Frank DeBoer can get them there, and I think he has gotten them there. I think that's not there right now. And there's a variety of reasons for it that have to change. There's no way around it. Ultimately, at the end of the day, the manager's job is decided by a couple of things. It's decided by results. Number one, numero uno, it's decided by results.
Mm-hmm.
For some clubs, the way you get the results is a factor. For some clubs, it doesn't matter. I think for Atlanta United, it does matter. Results are going to be the number one. And they should be. I think they have to be, especially with the ambition that Atlanta United started with. If you're not getting the results, you're going to have a problem. Right now, in a very short window, the results aren't there. So there's a problem. That's got to change. That's the pressure that this job entails. That's a good thing. The style question is a little bit harder to answer. It's not as simple as a yes-no because people interpret it differently. I think Frank's style is actually very bold and very risk-taking when you have all the pieces together, even when you didn't. I mean, the second half was crazy in terms of attacking tactics because, it was just throw as many people forward as possible, overload the left side with a left center back who's not a center back, but he's kind of playing it, bombing forward and being unmarked and creating an overload. That was a creative way to try to solve a problem. It ultimately didn't create a goal, but that was creative. He's very free with his center backs getting forward into the attack. That's good. The rotations are not there. And it's like last year it was more restrained because you were trying to get the shape and trying to get that understanding. This year it's almost too loose. And find the happy ground in the middle, and it's going to be better like it was at the good points last year when it's shaded both ways. The first half when it was good, it was more defensive, and you went on that shutout streak. The second half, when it was good, it was pretty swashbuckling, and there were a lot of goals, but there were some bad goals conceded too because of being reckless. So can you find the middle? Can you find that where you're attack-minded, you're getting numbers forward, but you're not reckless? I don't know if you found that balance consistently yet.
Also on the board, KFC says we're mid-table Saints, Joseph. 1 goal in any match in this tournament. We'd be even across the board. 2 wins, 1 draw, 2 losses. We're not right now. The inability to play consistently leaves us full of questions that won't be answered until we play again.
That's fair. And that's the reality for a lot of teams. And I know a lot of people have thrown up the LAFC example, and I get it. But Carlos Vela, his position is not the same as Joseph Martinez in his position. LAFC is benefiting a little bit from not selling Diego Rossi yet, and I think that was the intention going into this season because they added Brian Rodriguez to be that replacement. Brian Rodriguez temporarily becomes the Carlos Vela replacement. They've benefited from a group with horrible defending.
Yes.
Horrible defending. And the group Atlanta's in is not that at all. So I don't think LAFC wins the group that Atlanta's in. I think they're second to Columbus. I don't think Atlanta wins the group that LAFC is in. But I think they scored some goals, and I think they've probably at least won a match. So, where is it? It's not like for like. It's not comparing like for like. But without your leading goal scorer in this version of Atlanta United, are you a mid-table team? You should be. Right now, I don't know if you necessarily are in what we've seen. You should be. You shouldn't be any further down than that because there's too much talent for that to happen. That's got to be better here.
Ellen Reynolds, to be honest, I wasn't overly hopeful about this match anyway. The Crew are very good in 2020, has clearly decided that we cannot have nice things this year. Question: do you feel that for the past 3 years, the team has been overly reliant on Joseph to score the goals and that the lack of finishing is a result of that? Even when Joseph wasn't scoring, he typically had 2 or 3 guys marking him at all times, which maybe made things easier for the rest of the offense. Now it seems like every team that plays us has an extra guy on the field.
His presence is a huge thing. I think you're seeing it now more than ever because he's not there, and that's right. Instead of always looking for number 7, teams are just defending what's in front of them, and that makes it more difficult for Pity Martinez and for Ezequiel Barco because that's where the burden has fallen to. I don't know about the last 3 years that they've been overly reliant on Joseph. I think last year they were because you didn't have a secondary goal scorer. And I don't think that's necessarily a Frank de Boer problem. Tito Villalba is not what he was in year 1. He had injuries, and he wasn't ever the same player consistently.
Yep.
He didn't produce last year to be that secondary scorer. I don't think Julian Gressel's a 10-goal-a-year guy in this league. I think he's more like a 5-6. You need a secondary scorer. That was one of my number one things at the end of last season that just was glaring to me. You didn't have a secondary goal-scoring threat. You need that because you need to take some of the pressure off of Joseph. You need to take some of those 2 bodies that are worrying about him. You need to take one away and make it a little bit easier. Somebody else has got to step up. 2017, 2018, both years you had Miguel Almiron. And Miguel Almiron made teams defend differently because of his pace, but also he was capable of double-digit goals. Is Pity Martinez that player? He's not Miguel Almiron. He's not the same player. Can he be a 10-goal-a-year guy in this league? I think he can, and I think he should be. And he needs to be for this team to hit the heights that it can, with or without Joseph. He needs to be that 10-goal-a-year guy. If he is a 10-10, for me, I'm good. Anything beyond that, I'm ecstatic. But if he is a double-digit, a double-double guy,
yeah,
that's where he needs to be. And Barco's a little different, especially in the role that we've seen this year a little bit more, where he's dropping deeper. He's almost between an 8 and a 10 in some ways. That needs to continue. So you can take some of the goal scoring away from Barco, which this year has been crazy. He actually was making runs into the final third and crashing into the back post and things like that. Poacher type of work. I think Barco can be different when Pity's on song, when Joseph's on song. Joseph should be a 20-goal-a-year player. More is great, but 20 is where he's at. That's elite. Pity should be 10, secondary scorer level, but also providing double-digit assists. Barco, if he gets you double-digit assists, that's great, but you're looking at him, when I say connecting the play, it's not in the Nagbe sense because Nagbe does it from a deeper lying position, but yeah, I think Barco can give you some of that, more so than I thought. I still think Barco could thrive as a true number 10 with protection behind him, but very few teams play a true number 10 anymore. If he becomes, in this system, and let's say they stay in the 3-4-3, if he becomes the one of the 3-4-2-1, one of the 2 in the front that drops in to help the midfield and provide balance, brings the ball forward, but can also spring a through ball, can also pop out wide and put in a cross, that's great. I'm not looking at numbers as much on Barco. Pity, you need some numbers. You need the double-double. And last year on the assist side, right there. Goal side wasn't really there. You needed that this year before Joseph's injury. Now you need it desperately.
Michael had a couple of points. He says, his first point, congrats to Lennon, my man of the match. He ran himself into the ground, or man of the tournament, sorry. Ran himself into the ground for about 300 minutes. Kudos to Gallagher, a nice first appearance.
Really good from Gallagher.
Yeah. And then his questions, where's the player that earned the South American Player of the Year 2 years ago? Where is that special play, lots of bad first touches, and misplayed passes and crosses? That's his first point of 2.
Yeah, last night was not his best performance of the tournament. His best performance was the Red Bulls match. I thought he was really good in that one. Last night was a whole lot more of a mixed bag. He turned the ball over too easily in some spots. He did have some poor touches. He also created 5 chances in the second half. So it wasn't all bad, but it was wildly inconsistent. And those are the performances from Pitti that are not the most troubling. The ones that are most troubling is where there's really not any production of chances or anything going forward, and it's just the turnovers and sloppy play. You got both sides of it, but it was too all over the place. Maybe fatigue, maybe this tournament wearing down. I do think he was pressing. I think he was trying too hard to make something happen in the second half. Yeah. He had to, though, because who else was going to? That's the issue that you're in right now. Without a Joseph Martinez, it's like Pitti's being complained about for pressing too much, but then also for not doing anything, and it's like you can't have both. You're going to press when you're trying to do something. He needs to be a little more efficient in it, but when it's not when it's not happening for anybody else, then the number 10 shirt means something. The money you paid for him means something. The 2018 South American Player of the Year means something. And he's got to try to make it happen and put the team on his back. He wasn't able to do it last night.
Second point, congrats to the front office. Their initial signings and technical staff choices were almost perfect. Since then, meh. What signings have lived up to their hype other than Guzan and Nagbe? Having one of the league's most expensive rosters does not equate to these results.
It's too early to tell about this roster. They played 5 MLS games. Mm-hmm. It's way too early to say that this has been a bad move, and I don't think that's what's being said here. I think Matt's even a little unfair. Fernando Meza was really good before the pandemic. So-so in this tournament. I thought Miles Robinson had one of his worst games last night since becoming the Miles Robinson that we know. I mean, you're going back to a shakier Miles Robinson. He just didn't look confident defending. Franco Escobar, I would say, has been the best of the 3 in this tournament. But he's had his moments as well. Josetu Castro, Josetu was back and forth getting his visa. He came off the bench twice before the pandemic. The fact that he didn't get off the bench last night worries me. What's wrong there? What's going on? Why has he not earned that respect, that trust from Frank de Boer to get minutes in that game last night? Because I think his ability maybe could have been something that helped change it, but he didn't get a spot. Why? Manuel Castro, a little bit different conversation because he's playing a different role here than he's typically played, but he got here right before the pandemic broke. And he's played these 3 games in league play, played off the bench in Mexico City, basically, because there wasn't anybody else in the attack. That's tough. That's really tough. So it's difficult to say that this group, this roster construction, when you had the most changes at the end of year 3, that's pretty typical. You have guys who are ready for new deals, new contracts. Yeah, well, you had to replace them. And they've had 5 games. So it's a little early for that. But, yeah, it's going to be looked at. It should. That's the deal. That's what you're doing. You're trying to, when you have to replace players, you're trying to get it right the next time. And the jury is still out on that right now.
At Old Greg Street, Greg says, even if we were winning, I hate that we left the style that made Atlanta United what it was. It is boring. Players don't seem to like it. I'd rather lose with a fun style than win with a boring one. Will the front office entertain making a management change now seems like the best time to me?
Here's the well, no, I disagree with that because this is the greatest unknown of unknowns. I don't know of anybody who's looking for a new managerial job right now when they don't even know what the schedule is going to be. Yeah. So I disagree on now's the time to make a managerial change. It is in some people's mind because you don't have games, but I think that makes it even harder to do it.
Yeah.
Because I don't know who you're going to get. I don't think you need to do that. I think that would be a rash decision. The style thing is a definite personal preference because there are people, and I'm one of them, I want a team that tries to play with the ball, that is proactive with the ball, that is not a reactive team. That is what Frank de Boer is trying to do, and I think we've seen it. We haven't seen it consistently. But I would rather have that than be a purely counterattacking team. When you compare the differences now, Tata Martino came from a counterattacking vertical idea at the beginning of 2017 with a lot of pressing to, and not talking about the playoffs because that was a whole different conversation, but as you got to the end of 2018, it was more possession-oriented, it was less risk, it was more creating chances through possession. He was edging this way. Frank de Boer came in this way and hasn't progressed it yet, and I think some of it is down to the changes you've had with the roster this season with the injuries. That has to happen because that is the jump. You can be a team that dominates possession, but you don't create anything out of it. That needs to happen more often. I think it did in the second half of last season. It didn't happen by accident. It happened. You have to give the manager some credit there. You can't blame him for everything when it's bad, but not give any credit when it's good. But it needs to happen more often. Right now, it's very hard for that to happen because you are missing your best goal scorer, and that's showing. I just feel like at times, it's if you even mention that it is a problem for people, and it is a fact. It doesn't make everything okay. It doesn't, and this is where the word excuse can get twisted. It doesn't excuse poor play. It is part of the explanation for why having quality play at the moment is more difficult than it usually is. That happens when you lose a talented player, especially a goal scorer. They're even more critical because they're even more rare to have somebody like Joseph. So it's showing. It has to get better and more fluid. But think back to last year. It got more fluid as the year went on. This year, you're in Game 5. And you've had this big break. That's going to make it harder to be fluid.
And those are the last 2 points that you made are the two that I have been trying to impress upon folks that have interacted with me, is that you're in Game 5 with all these new faces trying to interact, get in a game state, figure out where things fit, and work it out from there. So that to me is the largest element in all of this, is that you're still trying to figure out where things are with a healthier bunch than you had in the first two. You have the 4-month layoff. You come back with 3. Those folks that weren't 100% or weren't with you are now with you. And so there's a lot of organization that has to come forward.
It's disjointed, and the chemistry and the cohesion has to be found because it's not there right now on both sides of the ball, offense and defense. All right, before we get back to Twitter, you need to tell everybody about our good friend Steve Apolinsky in Decatur, GA.
Since we are at halftime, I will most certainly do that. Apolinsky and Associates, LLC, proud supporter of soccer down here and everything on the SDH network. Wrongful death and serious injury attorneys. And there are a couple different ways that if that is something you need to have looked into, a couple different ways you can get in touch with Apolinsky and Associates. Go to aa-legal.com. That's the website. And you can get a free consultation 24/7, 365. If you want to talk to somebody, pop-up window on the website immediately. The second that you knock out the URL, low right-hand corner, you can have a conversation. Get a free consultation by calling 404-377-9191, or you can shoot Steve an email at steve@aa-legal.com. Over 20 years of experience and recognized as legal elite. This is what happens when you're trying to cut a promo at night. Recognized as legal elite by Georgia Trend Magazine, top 100 firms in the state of Georgia, over 30 years of experience, over $40 million in judgments for their clients in Georgia and Alabama. For all your wrongful death and serious injury needs, it's aa-legal.com.
All right, Wal Chara on Twitch. Don't you dare go anywhere, my friend. Don't you even think about it, my friend. I'm going to tell you why. Wal Chara on Twitch said, United kicked out, and I wasn't really upset. I don't think my fandom really took, sadly. Lots of mean fans, and I know that's everywhere, but wow, the comments have been bad. And I don't know if I want to be part of that. Okay, we're going to stop there for a second. We'll get into the next part in a second. Losses cause this sometimes, in all sports. I mean, go look at a Georgia football message board after a Georgia loss. Oh, my God. Mm-hmm. It happens. I think right now maybe the newness factor is one of the things that is kicking this up. I've been surprised at some of the personal side of how things have gone. That's been a little weird. That's not typical. I do think people are just in general maybe a little more bent out of shape than usual due to the pandemic. I think also, Chara, that you are finding. I hope you're finding it here with us. I hope that you're finding it with lots of other fans because whether they listen to SDH or not, there's lots of great fans who aren't cynical and not aggressive when it gets to that point and not mean. I hate that that's even, a thought about this fan base. And I don't think it's representative of the fan base. But it's crazy. And I hope that you stick around. This is not a normal season. This is not a normal situation. That's part of it on both sides of it, the play and on reactions from things. But I hope that you stick around because this is a real community when things are running in the right way. This has been very special for me, anyway, in seeing a community form around a soccer team in the city because, look, I've been a fan since I was a kid. I've had a pro team to watch. The first time I did was in '95. That team lasted 4 years. I ended up having the chance to work for them the last 2. That was my first team. It only lasted 4 years. The Silverbacks were never that team for me. I supported them. I worked with them. They came after my team. My team was the Atlanta Ruckus. I helped start Atlanta FC, and from an NPSL side, that was my team, and it became different when we partnered with the Silverbacks. It was the right move. We became the reserve team for the Silverbacks, produced players, moved them up to the first team. That's what you're trying to do. It became different at that point. Atlanta United, from day one, has felt different than all of it because it's felt like it has united the city. It has brought people together. It has created community that the others created very small communities around. This has been huge. I hope that this is not what the fan base is. Yeah. And I don't think it is. And I hope that this isn't what people think it is because I really don't think this is it. I think this is a reaction to a frustrating time and a frustrating tournament. And yeah, it's been a little bit more than I thought it would be in terms of meanness or aggressiveness. I hope you stick around, Chara. I really, really do, because what I love about doing this, what I love about what this team has done in this city for the game, is that it is bringing either longtime fans into a mix that they haven't had an opportunity to be in. Maybe they were a fan and they didn't have other friends around them who were fans. It's brought new fans, brand new fans to the game who've never been soccer fans. Now they're coming into this and they're talking about all the different aspects of things. That's what's beautiful about it. That's what I love about it. So there's plenty of good even when there is some bad. So don't be afraid to hit that mute button from time to time. I know I've used it. Try not to use the block button, but it's happened. Far more often it is the mute button because I don't like to be yelled at or people being mean about things that I have no control over, and I get it. But I hope that Chara, I hope that you understand, and people are talking to you in Twitch too. Don't go anywhere. Please hang out with us. I like your perspective because it is different. It comes from a different place. And a question like this is a prime example. He said, is it true Atlanta is about double the value of Columbus? It didn't seem that way. I like baseball, and usually the teams with the highest payroll impose themselves on inferior opponents, even when behind in the score. I guess it's different in soccer. I still sympathize with Atlanta United. I think it's like if Sporting Kansas City didn't have Polito. It just seems so bad. The value and the payroll are kind of two different things, and that's what is unique about soccer, is that you've got these worldwide valuations of players, and they're not necessarily tied to salary, and they're not necessarily tied to output today. Ezequiel Barco is a prime example. Reportedly, his transfer fee was around $15 million. Was he a $15 million a year player? No, he's not that now in salary. Was he, at that time, a player who you expected to produce like somebody you would pay $15 million for day one? No, he was a teenager. He's 18 at the time. He came in with more of a pedigree than Eric Lopez, for example, and that's why you're talking 3.7 versus 15. You're talking about a player in Barco who had around 50 appearances at the first team level, was involved in winning a Copa Sudamericana, and Lopez, who has 16 appearances at the first team level and has 4 goals. That's a part of the price tag difference. But also the age is why those price tags are in the millions. Because the idea is that they develop, and Barco is at that point now. They develop, they get attention from bigger clubs in Europe who are going to bring them in and pay the money to bring them in, and you sell them on at a profit. Now, the market's changed since Barco was bought, and that's going to be a big question about what that profit looks like. But that's the idea. And you're going to pay a lot for a younger player who you think you can sell for an even bigger price. An older player who might be more productive in day one, you're not going to pay as much for because the resale value is not there. The valuation is different than the salary, and that's not always reflective of the level. Atlanta's a team that has a high valuation and a high salary cap. But in MLS, the way it goes, it's not like in baseball where you can just pay whatever you want for everybody. In MLS, the differences are in the designated players, in the Pitti, in the Barco, in the Joseph Martinez, both in salary and what transfer fee you paid to bring them in. That's their cap hit. That's their cap number. That's where teams can spend a whole lot differently than everybody else. But the cap is restrictive. And where you're going to get differences is in valuations, but that doesn't always correspond to level. It's an interesting thing. So, is what it is. That's the thing. I mean, it's a hard thing to quantify because the soccer conversation, it's not 30 teams you're talking about. It's 30 plus leagues that are going to be involved in some of these transfers and the market and who could go where and all that. So there's a lot of things to it. We try to cover as much of it as possible to give you a global picture. Hopefully that's helping. But if you're on Twitter, I'm at Longshoe. If you got me there, if you need to send me a message or whatever, if there's anything I can do or explain stuff, don't hesitate. We'd love to help. And we'd love to have you stick around and still be part of the group. Por favor.
Yep. Last evaluation had Atlanta United from Forbes at $500 million. And that is the franchise.
No, that's a whole different thing. Yeah. Wildchar is talking about the player base. He's talking about transfer marked, for example. I'm sure probably people were saying, Atlanta should have won because they have more of a valuation on transfer marked.
Yeah.
That's a different conversation.
Anybody else on Twitch? Because we got a lot of folks on Twitter.
Oh, yeah, we got a lot of things. Let's see. Bernd Dursberger said, I think Darren Eales underestimated the influence EPL pundits have over the U.S. soccer online community. He might have not realized there was such strong preconceived, and Burst's words wrong, in parentheses, notions about FDB, and every losing streak this bubbles up again. I don't know if he underestimated it. I think he understands it, but yeah, it's strong. And I agree. I think it is preconceived, and I think it bubbles up when there's a losing streak. The same criticisms come up like the second half of last season didn't happen. I think Darren understood that, and I think he felt that the hire was worth it. And to win 2 trophies in year one, it's hard to say it's been a failure. To have a better winning percentage in terms of just percentage of games won, to have a better winning percentage than Tata Martino, and I know you picked up the team in year 3, not in year 1. I get that. It's hard to count it as a failure.
Yeah.
Does it mean that he's going to take it to the next level? I mean, the next level is to consistently be winning MLS Cup, to consistently be competing in CONCACAF. Is Frank going to be the guy to take it there? I don't know. I don't know yet. I hope so, but I don't have that answer yet. And is that a problem? Maybe. But that's a very small list of managers who are going to do that. It hasn't happened in MLS. You haven't had a manager in MLS who's gotten to that point and been that guy. You've got a Brian Schmetzer, who has been a great playoff manager and has won 2 MLS Cups during his run. You've got Greg Vanney in Toronto, who won a treble, who got to a final last year, who got to a final of CONCACAF. Okay. You've got Bob Bradley, who's won a Supporter Shield and is in CONCACAF now. We'll see how that goes. You've got managers who have shown things, but I think what Darren is betting on is getting to that next level that MLS hasn't been to. He hired Frank de Boer to do that. You're judging him differently on that. And you do need to judge him harshly. And you have to get to a point that when you still think that you can get there, you're going to keep on this pathway. And if you get to a point that you feel like you cannot get there, then you're having a different conversation. Still doesn't mean it's a failure. And I think that's the number one element here is this is not a pass-fail grade. You won 2 trophies. You were the 3rd best team in the regular season last year. You were the 3rd highest scoring team in the regular season last year. For all they don't score goals anymore. You were number 3. Nobody scored 70 goals 3 straight years. It was bound to happen. But you were still number 3. That's not a failure, no matter what happens from here on out. You still have things you have to fix, and you still have those same questions. Is it going to get to that next level now? Is Frank going to be that guy? That's the job he's being judged on. Not every game, every result. That's not where this club is. They're thinking big picture. Now, you can sometimes get blinded and not pay attention to the details. I don't think that's the case either. But you can't strictly judge this job by 3 games in Orlando in a tournament that didn't exist before the season in a year that has been interrupted by a global pandemic. That's a little harsh judgment on somebody who won 2 trophies the year before. I don't know.
MLS is back tournament breaking news sounder, please.
Oh, hold on. I got to get it. I'm almost there. Where'd it go? I missed it. There it is. Breaking news, John Nelson.
Vancouver Whitecaps FC acquired goalkeeper Jonathan Soroy on loan from the Montreal Impact.
Did that really need breaking news?
From all of their breaking issues that they had, especially with Maxime Crépeau suffering a broken left thumb, it is broken news. It filled their goalie need, which was one of the more underlying questions of the entire tournament.
The breaking news element of that is that they couldn't use the pool goalkeeper because he was registered to an American entity, and to go to Vancouver's team, even in Orlando, he would have needed his international transfer certificate to be moved from the U.S. Federation to the Canadian Federation. You can't do that right now because the transfer window's not open. They had to find another way. They might owe Montreal a whole lot of Tim Hortons to have made that happen, because they could have only got somebody from Montreal or Toronto. That was it.
Yep. 19-year-old keeper, so he will be the backup for the final game of the tournament.
And boom goes the dynamite.
There you go. How you doing?
What? That doesn't even fit.
Just saying hi to the dude.
You said it like Joey, like hitting on somebody on Friends, and we were talking about a Canadian goalkeeper getting trained. I'm confused. I do agree with Badgermon, though, that the Canadian Maple Donuts might be worth making that loan.
Ooh. See, Timbits, Tim Hortons, the coffee.
Timbits are the best.
Yeah, see, that's...
I love our trips to Canada for the Timbits.
Yes. See, and I wish there was a way that you could bring them back and they would still keep their constitution.
They're Canadian. That doesn't happen.
Just
something
check.
About the Canadian air.
Yes. Yeah, it's metric.
Yeah.
The amount of oxygen is metric by comparison.
Yeah. Badgermon, I did not see this yet, talking about the Athletic, said, I'm surprised that a journalist who I trust just dropped an article that brings up FDB at Crystal Palace and Inter, and he's asking the questions. It's an easy question to ask right now, and look, you're trying to get clicks. That's part of the gig. That's part of the game. Luckily here, that's not what we do. That's not our world. We're not getting clicks like that. Hopefully people are sticking around for long periods of time. It's a different game. It's a different conversation. So I understand it. I don't like it. I'm not a fan of it. It's not the route that I go with these sorts of things, but it's also why I don't do that. You know, I do this where it's long form and we get to talk in detail and not try to pull something out that's going to get clicks. So it is what it is. Thad Dooley's a little disappointed in you, John.
Oh, what did I do this time?
You have not made an American Bandstand reference lately.
Well, it just has to do with a lack of rhythm, I guess, on my part. So
this is true. We're just going to bounce around Twitch a little bit right now since we caught up on Twitter. Because,
well, we really didn't, but go.
Oh, we got more on Twitter.
we got like 9 hours worth of Twitter.
We don't have 9 hours.
I was just deferring to to see what's going on Twitch.
If I start snoring, just like yell at me or something.
Oh, we have lineups, by the way, for Cincinnati and Red Bulls.
Give me the biggest surprise in the lineup for Cincinnati.
Okay, well, go to Twitch and I'll look at them and I'll tell you.
Never mind, it's not that big of a deal. I was testing.
No real surprise in the lineup for Cincinnati. It looks like most of their greatest hits that have come out for the game against Red Bulls.
What about the Red Bulls? What's the biggest surprise? What jumps out to you, John?
What jumps out to me is I have to actually click the Red Bulls account to actually tell you what's going on.
Oh, no, he just didn't.
Yeah, he just did. No, I don't care about Red Bulls 2.
Naughty.
I'm close. Give it a minute. Okay, so there we go.
Good grief.
Hey, look, Linus, you need to calm down, or Charlie Brown, or whoever you were. No real surprises for Red Bulls either. I mean,
Who's starting up top?
Royer Long.
Long is not a center forward.
Sorry, I'm looking at numbers. Be quiet.
Long is the center back.
Sorry. Tarek, Duncan, Kaku, Omir Fernandez, Velo, Caceres, Pendant, Davis, Long, and Royer.
No Barlow?
No Barlow.
No White?
He is in the expanded, but he is not there. And both White and Barlow are in the roster, but they are not in the starting 11.
Run through that one more time real fast.
Jensen, Tarek, Duncan, Kaku, Omir Fernandez, Velo, Caceres, Pendant, Davis, Long, Royer.
I'm intrigued. It could be Fernandez. It could be Kaku. Royer will be up there. Could be Velo. Now I'm intrigued. I want to see what the Red Bulls look like with a mishmash, no real true number 9, and how this looks. Yeah, I'm intrigued.
No White or Barlow in your starting 11 for Red Bulls.
Look, I want to make something clear as I see what's going on with the athletic thing. The job is to get clicks. Like, it is. That's what pays. I understand it. Like I said, it's not my approach because we're in a different medium here, but I do understand it. I'm not a fan. I think looking back at Crystal Palace and Inter elements talking about today with Frank de Boer is not relevant. I don't think it has anything to do with what's going on in the Orlando tournament. And I do think it's something to get clicks. But that is also the job. So, it is what it is. Again, you can disagree. It's all good. I mean, it's Felipe Cardenas who wrote it, and Felipe is a friend of the show. And Felipe and I don't agree on everything about soccer. And that's not a bad thing. It's okay. Everybody comes at it from different places, but I understand his job.
Yeah.
I completely understand his job, and I definitely understand his job in this environment. You got to get them clicks. You got to get people to read your stuff. The Athletic needs views. They need subscribers. Mm-hmm. These are facts. And many times, the way to get those reads is something like this, because it's obviously got people going today.
Yeah. Shiny object.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. I haven't read the article yet, so I can't speak on the article. I'm just speaking on the topic. And it is what it is. It doesn't make Felipe a bad guy. It doesn't make the Athletic bad people. It means they're trying to get people to read the content. And there's zero wrong with it. You can still disagree. You can read it and disagree with it. And that's okay too. And that's not a foreign thing in journalism either. Yeah. You can write something here to get that somewhat negative reaction from people who disagree and think about why they disagree and then express why they disagree. That can have an effect as well.
USL Championship, Pittsburgh and Indy 11. They're goalless in the 58th. Red Bulls 2 and Union 2 are under a weather delay. What else do you
Give me another Twitter. We've got a ton of Twitch. Just give me another Twitter.
We got a ton of Twitter.
Give me a tweet.
Shiva, I can't listen tonight, but I wanted to give you my thoughts. We had only 5 players in the lineup yesterday that were not new. Miles, Franco, Brad, Picky, and Barco. So what I see is a lack of chemistry and that lack of leadership on the field. Players are talented, but if they can't figure this out amongst themselves, then it falls on the coaching staff to fix it.
Chemistry, leadership, 100%. And yes, it ultimately will come down to the coaching staff to make those decisions. And then beyond that, since it's been brought up over and over again today, then ultimately it's the front office's decision, once you get to that point. But, yeah, you're incorporating a lot of things all at once. And some of it by some design because you made decisions on contracts. I disagree with some of the narrative out there that you could have kept everybody and not had any changes to your roster. I don't think that was possible.
Yeah.
And not even beyond player wishes. I just don't think it was possible to pay everybody the increased money that they wanted to be paid and keep them. I don't think that was going to happen because of the cap. So that's part one. Part two is you had players who actively wanted to go. Darlington Nagbe was offered a deal, long-term deal. He wanted to go. He wanted to go closer to home. You can't fault him for that. You can't fault the team for the way they handled it. They got a return. Julian Gressel wanted to be paid more. He was valued very highly by DC United. Based off the way he played in this tournament, I think they overpaid. But that's short sample size.
Yep.
So you can't judge that deal on 3 games either. But I don't think you could have paid him and kept him. You decided to go get Brooks Lennon, smaller number. You think he's going to be a better fit. The jury's still out. I've liked Brooks Lennon's work. He does give you different things than Julian Gressel. He hasn't given you that same quality on crossing yet. And can he get there? And do you need him to get there right now, or can he give you different things to make up for that? We're going to have to find out over time. That's not going to happen in 3 games, 5 games. LGP we talked about earlier. These things are real. It's a flow chart. The players have to develop the chemistry. The players have to have someone on the field step up with leadership and have better communication, because there's been too many issues with players being pulled out of position, players being out of position, players not knowing there's somebody behind them attacking and defending. There's been too many issues of lack of communication. Players have to do that. Manager has to find the best chemistry, has to find a team that has leadership in it, et cetera, et cetera. And the front office has to make the big decisions about, do you have the right players who can give you that chemistry? Do you have leaders? Do you have enough talent? And do you have the technical staff that is going to be the best for this group? That's the flow chart. That's any team, anytime. And right now, you have questions across the board because of a poor tournament. And it has to be better going forward. There's no ifs, ands, and buts about that. It has to be better going forward. If it's not, those questions are going to get louder in each of those silos.
Jordan Myers with a bit of a thread. Of the new signings by the front office, Lennon has been the only one that really stands out to me as a solid replacement. He was the bright spot for me this tournament. The work rate on both ends of the pitch and the attacking mindset with crosses and runs make me not miss Gressel. I hope when we get a striker, he can make similar connections. On another note, I've been an FDB defender for a while, and I still don't think his time is up, but this tournament was frustrating. It seemed like we saw 5 halves of something that just wasn't working. Is this a disconnect in the construction of the roster and coaching style? And there are other questions to follow.
Last part I don't know. And it's too early to tell with this group because there are changes. I disagree about the quick judgment on everybody. We've talked about that during the show. I'm not going to rehash it again. Meza, I was really happy with earlier in this tournament. He wasn't at the same level. And was that because of individual performance of Meza? Was it a collective that affected his individual performances? Need more time to see it. I do like what Brooks Lennon brought you from day one. I liked his game at RSL. I like how he can fit into this team, and I love the heart he plays with. And I think you need more of that in this team. If you don't have a vocal leader, you have to have guys who lead by example, and they can be younger than the average. Brooks Lennon's not an old player, not a veteran player. Leads by example with the way he plays. It has to inspire the players around him, and that was one of the highlights of these 3 games. There wasn't a whole lot, but Brooks Lennon was one of them for me.
Follow-up, is this just an overabundance of new players without chemistry? Either way, it seems like everyone needs to sit down and have some serious conversations about tactics and player purchases.
I don't know about the player. We've covered the player purchases. I don't know if it's that yet. I think you need time. I really think time is needed, and you haven't had it. For a variety of reasons that are real and are not excuses and are not made up, you need to develop that chemistry for this team to be what it can be. I think it's too early to say that it can't be what you're intending for it to be. But the questions and sitting down and the questions and the figuring things out, that has to happen for sure because of this performance. Doesn't mean you make drastic changes, but the questions have to be asked right now because this was a poor, uncharacteristic performance.
Stizzle, the blame squarely rests on many things. Nagby, Gressel, LGP, etc. all played their roles well. The replacements just aren't getting it done. Frank's style doesn't work here, especially with this roster's makeup. Either a rebuild or a management change is needed.
It's harsh, and we've talked about it. My thought is that the Joseph injury has changed things as well, and it can't be left out of that conversation. It does play into it. And I don't think it's fair to leave it out and act like it didn't happen. So that changes the conversation as much as the pandemic and the training and then the lack of games and then coming into this. We talked on 99 today with Nick Green from the Braves, and he echoed some of this from a baseball perspective because, 2 preseason games before going into the season? Is that right?
Yeah.
So 2 games, and he talked about how it's hard to ramp up the intensity in that because, you're used to playing 20 or so spring training games and then going into the season. So that intensity ramps up over time. 2, it's very difficult. And he's really interested to see early on in the season what that looks like, how sharp everything looks. The same questions we've had in this tournament. The same questions I think every team in this tournament's had. So it's tough. It doesn't absolve you from everything, but it is a factor. And the Joseph injury makes this team incomplete. It's an incomplete team at the moment because it was built to be one thing, and it can't be that thing right now because your star striker had to have surgery on his knee. That's a fact, too. It does factor in. And is it enough to make everything okay? No, it's not. It still should be better. But it is a factor, and I think it's impossible to ignore that.
Lewis Martin with a hashtag on par reaction.
Lewis, what's up?
As a lifelong Atlanta sports fan, I laugh at people who jump off the bandwagon. I'm not happy, but I will support Atlanta United no matter what.
Yeah, Atlanta sports will break your heart a lot of times. Hopefully Atlanta United doesn't become one of those sources of that eventually, but it's a short window right now of 3 games in this tournament that doesn't change who a club is. It doesn't change who a manager is. It doesn't change who a team is. It's 3 games in a tournament, and it wasn't good enough. And you ask the questions because you're always asking the questions. But you don't jump to conclusions from 3 games, I don't think. A bunch of stuff on Twitch. I'm going to hit some of this. Burned with a good point. Meza, and this has come up in an interview somewhat recently, Fernando Meza hasn't seen his wife, hasn't seen his kids all year due to the pandemic.
Yeah.
It's not the most conducive thing to performance at the moment. He's not the only one in that kind of situation. Even just the fact going into the bubble. That's going to affect guys mentally in ways that you're not used to. Has to be remembered. This is tough. This is difficult, and that even complicates it more. So you have to remember this stuff. This is not normal. It's hard to make a lot of strong judgments at the moment on anything in sports because nothing is proceeding as normal. The environment you're playing in is different. The environment you're living in is different. You don't know what the rest of the season looks like. You've got new faces. You are playing in different kinds of conditions with those 9 a.m. games that I thought would work. They didn't work. I was wrong. I was 100% wrong on that. It's a lot of stuff. It's hard to make judgments comparing it to pre-COVID-19 because that's not the world we're living in right now. So, and it does have an impact on performance. It does. No way around it. Colonel says, will there be an MLS season after the tournament? I'm thinking no. I can tell you that there are plans to have a season after the tournament. I know that much at least. I have been asked questions about setups and things going forward that would not be asked if there was no plans to play. So there are plans to play. We've mentioned it on the show. Dallas sent out, beginning of the tournament, I think before they went home, they sent out an email to their season ticket holders and talked about a schedule coming out at the end of this month. My feeling is that's probably been delayed because now things have changed with Toronto, with Montreal, with Vancouver.
Yeah.
Everybody was banking on the ability to have an exemption from quarantine to play and cross the border. That didn't happen. The Blue Jays were caught by surprise by it. MLS teams are now going to have to make decisions because are you going to let 3 teams in Canada and their inability to play in Canada and cross the border back and forth, is that going to stop your whole season? Probably not. It's probably not a good business decision. But what do you do? Where do they play? How do they handle it? How do you do this? That's a lot of additional stuff you got to figure out now. And that's just happened. That wasn't the case, last week? Yeah. I'm trying to remember when the Toronto... Did it happen Friday, maybe? I don't know.
The Toronto, Buffalo, Pittsburgh beginning?
Yeah, just when Toronto... When the government said, nah, you can't do this.
Yeah, late last week.
Yeah, so it's been pretty sudden. MLS has got to adjust based off of that. But they're talking about finding a way to play. But it's not going to happen anytime soon. I mean, this tournament's going to go till August 11th. I don't see regular season games for at least 2 weeks after the tournament's over.
Labor Day?
That's probably a safe bet. I think the beginning of September. And then it's all playing it by ear because things could be different by then in a good way or bad way. There's no way to know. Major League Baseball is going to be something to observe because they are doing what MLS is intending to do in terms of playing in home markets, playing behind closed doors, but traveling. That's going to bring some different complications into it. Can they do it? If they can't, MLS won't. You can't. Unless they do it wrong, and I don't think they are. I think their protocols are sound, and I think a lot of them are based off what MLS has done and what the Bundesliga has done. So it's too early to call, but there are plans to do it. I can tell you that much for sure. There is not an intention to not play a season after this tournament. That is not the intention from the league and from the clubs. Doesn't mean it happens, but that is not the intention at the moment. Ropes said Meza looked like he took a knock early in the game. It was later in the first half. Yeah, because we talked about it. He went up and won a header, and he came down wrong on his right leg, I think. And he gutted it out and got you to halftime. Yeah. But he was not right. He got okay, and I think probably when he cooled down at halftime, it was done. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was ankle. I don't know if it was knee. I don't know if his leg just locked up on him, dead leg. I'm not 100% sure, but when he came down from winning the header, he was hobbling pretty badly for a while, and then he got to where he was moving okay, and he finished the half for you. I thought Columbus would try to exploit that a little bit more. They ended up not really being able to, but he could only go 45. Yep. Byrne said, asking me, do you think there's a strong collaboration between the front office and FDB when it comes to player acquisition, like a Klopp or a Pep would be involved in signing for their clubs? I don't know, and I don't know how that falls in this club. Frank has talked about how he is involved. He's never said that I'm not involved. He's talking about the specific types of players that he wants. I don't know if he is picking from a list. I don't know if he is saying, hey, I want this player, go get him for me. I don't know past he's involved. He's involved in the conversations. He's involved in assessing the roster and what is needed. His input is definitely involved. I don't know if he is saying yes or no once it gets to that point on a player. That part I don't know. But he is involved in the ideas of how this team is going to recruit talent. Lots of talk about articles at The Athletic. Burned again from before. We didn't get a chance to hit it yet. It's so hard to play 2 10s, Pitti and Barco, together and come up with a system that works. FDB pulled it off last year, and that's Burned. I'm so glad you said that because I feel like I'm talking into the abyss when I say that. The NYC and the Portland games last year played exactly like this team is intended to play with Joseph Martinez. It's the same shape, it's the same formation, and it wasn't a 2 up top. It was 1 up top. Pitti and Barco were behind Joseph. And those were 2 of the best games last year. You have to account for having 2 number 10s. And you can do it multiple ways. I think when it worked best for this team, it was 2 10s with one of the 10s, and in this case Barco, playing like an 8 at times. Right now, Barco's not 100%. Yeah. I don't think so anyway. I think he's making the most of what he's got, but he wasn't 100%. He didn't start the first game. I got you into the second half in game 2. He's giving you what he's got. I love his drive. I love his his effort. I love that about Ezequiel Barco, but he's not 100% at the moment. He won you 7 free kicks yesterday. I'll take that anytime you get it. But I don't think he's able to give you the elements of the 8, so those 2 holding midfielders are isolated at times. Burns said Marcelo Gallardo made it work with Juanfer Quintero and Pitti, but they had a striker. Gallardo is a world-class tactician. The striker is a key part of it. He also didn't always play them together. He would a lot of times split the difference with them, and they'd rotate between the two, which maybe there's going to be some games where you have to figure that out with this team. And that's okay. If you're going to be in a normal season with CONCACAF, with Open Cup, with MLS, there's plenty of games to go around, and against certain opponents, you might have to only play one and play another more deep-lying holding midfielder or somebody who can give you that element. That's fine. And I think that's the point that Frank got to last season, late in the year, where he could adapt his tactics more towards the opponent. And we saw it in the playoffs as a prime example, the Philadelphia game changing the shape because of the way Philadelphia plays. That was a masterstroke. I mean, having the ability to play Mikey Ambrose at left back in that game caught everybody by surprise. He'd been playing for the twos. He was ready. He delivered. Frank knew he could deliver. It was the right tactics for that match. This season, you haven't had the ability to get to that point where you can change the tactics match by match because the Joseph injury. You haven't figured that out yet. You have to get your base figured out first before you can make match-by-match tactical changes and shape changes and lineup changes in dramatic ways. The season is a marathon. This season might be different, but that was the intention coming in. The Joseph injury changed it. The stop-start nature of the season changed it. All the additions have changed it. I don't think he's settled on his base yet to get to the point that we saw late last year where you'd see games where Pitti sat. And it was a big, shocking thing, and everybody freaked out. But just because you paid a lot of money for Pitti Martinez doesn't mean you need to play him 90 minutes every game, no questions asked, and not worry about the opponent and not worry about where he's at, his fitness.
Considering he came in on fumes anyway.
That's different. I'm talking about the end of the season. I'm talking about the end of the season when Pitti was put on the bench and people freaked out.
Yeah.
No, there's nothing wrong with that. It's okay. Sometimes it's not the right matchup, and you play with that. Just because you paid a lot of money doesn't mean he has to play 90 minutes every game. You want to get the best minutes out of him.
Yep.
That's the important part. So you haven't got to that point yet this year because of all of the stuff. You haven't got to the point that you can say, this is a game to play 2 10s, this is a game to play a 10, but we're going to ask Barco to play deeper and drop in a little bit more. Or this is a game where I can't play Pitti and Barco together. I'm going to have to do something different. Or this is a game where I'm going to have to play a line of 4. You haven't even gotten to that point because you haven't got the base nailed down yet. It's game 5 of the MLS season. You played 3 CONCACAF games. You had a 4-month break. It happens.
Yeah.
I know you don't want to hear that, but it happens.
And Abby Schiffman makes the point on Twitter that she doesn't think that Emerson Hyndman's 100% right now either.
Yeah, and that's a valid question. I don't think he's 100% in terms of being able to go 90, and I think we've seen that so far. I think he's looked good in moments, and it might just take time. It might just take some time. And that's the thing we don't know about this. You know, he said he had it. He was one of the players who tested positive. He didn't talk about having bad symptoms. He didn't talk about all that. But what kind of an effect? I don't think we're going to know for years. To be honest, on athletes, I don't think we're going to know for a long time. I mean, you know, the question and with the Braves right now, Freddie Freeman, he's looked pretty good in the early going of his at-bats. He's looked fine. Is he going to have, you know, problems when you're starting to play every day? We're going to have to wait and see. There's nothing to base it on. So Emerson, in his case, is this going to, you know, affect him for a short period of time? Is it going to affect him for a long period of time? We know he missed training time. There's no way around that. That will affect your fitness. So, yeah, these are all elements that you're dealing with for the first time ever. Gustavo, checking in from Buenos Aires. Gustavo says, SDH, do you know how many Atlanta United fans are probably Braves, Hawks, and/or Falcons fans? It's not 100%.
Because they did that crossover study when they were doing their initial research.
That was in season tickets. That's not fans. There's a major difference in that. Season tickets is a different conversation. Fans, I think there are more, and this is totally anecdotal from me. I think there are more Atlanta United fans who are fans of the other teams in town or fans of teams in other sports than most MLS cities. I feel like Atlanta United has attracted sports fans more than other cities have.
Yeah, I could see that.
I don't think they're all Braves, Hawks, and Falcons fans. I think that's one thing about the, hey, Chico, I'm a Hawks fan. I like the new uniforms a lot. And I like Trae Young a lot. But I think there's a lot of things that have happened with Atlanta United being the team of the new Atlanta, because you have a lot of people who moved to Atlanta who are fans of the Red Sox and Patriots and Celtics because that's where they grew up or that's where they lived. And they come here and maybe they weren't a fan of the Revolution. Sorry, Shooter. But they come here and they become a fan of Atlanta United, and that's their connection to the city. So you've got some weird things with that, Gustavo, and it's probably a little bit, I'm sure it's completely different from your experience in Buenos Aires. But it's a unique element here that you have a lot of sports fans that are fans of Atlanta United and real fans. They might not be season ticket holders, but they're real fans, and they listen on the radio, and they follow along, and they listen to SDH, and they read Dirty South Soccer, and they read The Athletic, and they consume all of it. They read the AJC, and they're huge fans of the Braves, and they're really excited about opening day, and they're excited about the Hawks new uniforms, or they hate the Hawks because they're fans of the Bulls. It's all good. But I think you have more sports fans that are also Atlanta United fans than any other city in this country and any other team in this league.
Dan Murphy on Twitter, he says, well, guys, for most of the pandemic, I've been doing pretty well with my mental health. After the game last night, I feel like I'm coming unhinged. My take...
Oh, no, don't do that.
Your team will always reflect the personality of your coach. Frank has turned us into the heavily favored European side heading into the World Cup with talent all over the field who crashes out of the group stage because they cannot figure out how to play together. We are now a really difficult team to watch play. Hashtag Overreaction Wednesday.
I don't think we were that before this tournament. The tournament factor comes into it, and we've seen this in every World Cup. Every World Cup's had a favorite who has underperformed. Every World Cup has had a team have this happen to them where they concede in 3 games, 2 goals in the first 20 minutes, and 1 red card in the first 26 minutes. You have those happen. You take the Atlanta United name off of it, and you can put any team you want into that situation. In 3 games, you've conceded 2 goals in the first 20 minutes in 2 of them, or a goal in each, and you've conceded a red card in the 26th minute of the other game. Very few teams are going to win any of those games. Is it going to happen? Yes, of course. It's going to happen sometime. It's not likely. That's any team. That's not even getting into new players, incorporating new players. That's not getting into Joseph. That's not getting into anything. That's what's happened in these games. You could have had everybody. You could have been hitting on all cylinders. You give up a goal in the 4th minute. You give up a goal in the 16th. I don't remember what it was last night.
16th.
You give up a goal, you give up a red card in the 26th. You're going to have a hard time winning those games. It's just a fact. The reasons why you've done those things, that's what we've been talking about all this. But I don't think Frank's turned the team into that. I think it's something where right now you have to find another way to threaten the opponent. Joseph always threatens the opponent. He's not there. You have to find another way to do it because teams respect Atlanta. They're not afraid of Atlanta right now. That makes it easier for them. And you've got to be better in the early stages of matches. That's just a non-negotiable. You need to be that every single day, no matter who's playing. You have to be better in early stages of matches. It's just like we've talked about with Atlanta United, too, from their last home match, is as good as they played, and they played really well. They played good soccer. They didn't close out the half in both halves. Just like not giving up early goals. You can't do that. You can't give up goals at the end of halves. It's brutal. It changes what your halftime is. It changes your mood for the start of the second half. And you give up a goal at the end, well, you had a 2-1 win, and it became a 2-2 draw. You dropped 2 points. You can't do that. These are all things that factor in. I mean, it does. So you can't consistently do those things. You can't consistently make those mistakes. That's got to change. You got to threaten the opponent more than anything with this team right now because teams are just not afraid of this attack. the defense, for all the question marks, for those lack of focus moments, those early goals, you're conceding a goal a game. You should be winning some of these games. You're not getting enough going forward. It is a combination of things at the worst time.
Bad Aska agrees that John Gallagher really impressed him yesterday. One of the best things he saw. Never saw him do anything bad.
Oh, yeah, Gallagher was great. I was so impressed with him. I was really happy for him because he's put in a lot of work to get to that point.
Yep, love to see it. Bruce Hawthorne's in with a couple of ideas. He says, is there any conceivable way that this is all a trick and Frank has been body swapped with his twin brother?
Oh, no. I hope not. I mean, his twin brother doesn't have as much managerial experience, so, I mean, you don't want that to happen. That's not good. He wouldn't be ready for this. And he wouldn't know these guys. I mean, he wasn't here. So that's not good.
And then the second point from Bruce, he says, should we just play an entirely new formation? Watching the game, we get pressed by every team, but yet it looks like we never pressure the other team they have all day. On the broadcast last night, he mentions Taylor Twellman was correct in saying nobody's scared or pressured by us now anymore.
Yeah, and that's what we've all been saying. I mean, that part's there for everybody to see. The formation, I love what the 3-4-3 can be. I worry that without Joseph and without the cohesion that you have right now, I don't think you can get the most out of it. I don't think it's a liability, but I think you can get more out of something else, and you have to consider that now. And that's going to change the lineup, and it's going to be harder to build that base, but it's what you went through last year. You played 3-4-3. You moved to 4-2-3-1, 4-3-3. That gave you more security. It also limited your ability to get forward, and that's part of the issue for a lot of people right now. That's part of the trade-off. You get more numbers forward out of a 3-4-3 or 3-5-2, but it's riskier. Right now, I don't know if you have the right players. The problem is, I don't know if you go to a 3-5-2, for example. It's not a dramatic change. I don't think that's it. If you go to 4 in the back, okay, Franco Escobar be your right back. He can still play the same way. Fernando Meza would be a center back. He's a smart enough player to be able to sit and play with Miles and stay back and not make the runs that we've seen him make. Cool. Left back, can George Bello be a left back? Can he give you enough defensive work right now in his career? Do you play Edgar Castillo, a veteran? Maybe that's a safer move at the moment. Maybe that's what you have to do in the short term. Okay. Midfield, how do you make it work? How do you make room for Pitti? How do you make room for Barco? Do you play them out wide? Do you play Pitti as a 10? Do you play Barco as a 10 with Pitti out wide? Who's going to be the number 9 is still the question in a 4-3-3. And if you go to a 4-4-2, I mean, then you're trying to find 2 forwards. You don't know who 1 is yet. It's not easy just to change the shape. You have to consider it now, though, because you've seen a good bit of the 3-4-3 with different groupings. It hasn't been good enough. Maybe you can't play that right now. Maybe you can't play it without Joseph. Maybe that's what you've learned from this tournament. Doesn't mean it's an easy answer as to what you do differently, though. It's just going to create different issues in different places. But you might have more solutions in a different setup. That's what you have to consider right now, and you got a lot of time to consider it.
10-minute warning. I'm going to try to combine some things here where I can. Rico Richardson at Crunk ATL, El Mataflow, and Ricky Ricardo wanted a couple of different things about Charlotte with their announcement today. Okay. Rico Richardson says it's another Euro snob name. Boo.
I'll tell you the same thing I've always said about this. And I want to hear what the general sports reaction is in Charlotte. And I don't know what it is yet. Atlanta United, soccer people weren't necessarily excited about it. Non-soccer people said it sounded like a soccer team, and they liked it. It sounded authentic to them. Is Charlotte FC going to have that effect? You have to brand it right to make it work. Yeah. Atlanta United branded everything around the name correctly, and it worked. And I think United was a word that I know it didn't apply in the same way that it typically does with two clubs merging together. I know. But in Atlanta, I think that word maybe had more meaning than it does in Minnesota, for example. Yeah. And you were able to play off of that. So they got the branding right, and the name has worked because of that. Charlotte FC, can you do enough around it to make that work? And what's the reaction from the population as a whole? I don't know yet. I'll be really curious to see. It doesn't hurt you I don't think it's like the worst thing ever that hurts you. It doesn't help you just because of the name either. They've got to put the work into it. I like the colors.
Yes.
The badge is fine. It doesn't blow me away, but it's fine. You can do things with a crown element in the logo. You can play off of that. You can play still off Queen City. You can do things with that. So it's not horrible. I thought they could have done better, but I want to see how all of the branding clicks and how it is responded to in the community in Charlotte, which is a community that I don't know how they're going to respond to it.
So, Kevin, from Charlotte, you're our lead on this to let us know how this continues to evolve. El Mataflo says, I knew I'd seen the Charlotte FC logo before. He saw it in PES, who are fans of PES with MAB Football Club. So
yeah, it's also like the parent company of the Football Manager games as well. It's not an adventurous logo. It's not at all.
And then Ricky Ricardo wants, he says, does Southern Royalty sound like an interesting derby name between Atlanta and Charlotte?
We talked about that. It's just going to be down to what clicks. If you want it, then push it and try to get retweets and see if it sticks. I don't like El Tráfico. A lot of people get mad if you don't like El Tráfico. It's American. It's unique. It's different. I think it's lame. That's just me. I don't want a rivalry based off of traffic. I think I don't like it. That's me. If that's what everybody calls it, that's what everybody calls it.
I was born there. Traffic is a part of the fabric of LA. I get it. So
no, I get it. I just don't think it's a good name for the rivalry. But if it's what the rivalry becomes, then it becomes something more than just a name. So it doesn't matter what you call it. But I think there will be a rivalry between Atlanta and Charlotte for sure. I'm excited to see that one develop because I think Atlanta turns into, other fans of other schools. I think Atlanta turns into the University of Georgia in the SEC, where you've got a bunch of rivalries because everybody wants to beat you. And you've just played teams for a long time, and it's just a rivalry. Nashville will be that. Charlotte will be that. Orlando's not going to go away. You've got the rivalry with the Red Bulls. You'll have them all over the place, and that's a good thing. Those games have a little more meaning to it. They have a little extra oomph. I like oomph.
Daniel Price admitted that he was going to try and be in the Twitch timeline talking to folks at 7 because he had to put the kiddo to bed.
He did. We got it. Well, I said that earlier. You missed that.
Okay. All right, so I missed it.
Yeah, you were here. I mean, you were part of the show at that point. You didn't leave.
Yeah, but I missed it.
A little bit.
Shocker. Bartimus Prime, Remedi, and Heinemann started 3 of our first 5 matches of the season as the midfield pairing had only never started a match together and only played 53 minutes together in this tourney. Why were they not paired together more often?
I don't know. It's a question. I saw it come through, and it's a very good question. I don't know, and I'm surprised it hadn't come up in post-game conversation with Frank de Boer or in pregame conversation. It's a pairing that has some balance to it. Remedi can sit deeper and Heinemann can push forward, and it worked for Heinemann really well in those first 2 MLS games where he scored goals. And Remedi looked more like the Eric Remedi when he first arrived, and not the Eric Remedi at the end of last season that lost his spot. So is that the best pairing? Do they have the best chemistry? They had pretty good chemistry, and we didn't really see him go back to that this year or in this tournament. So I don't know. I don't know why that is. I wish I did because it is a really good question. I like Mo Adams. I like Jeff Lorenowitz. I like Mateo Sosetu in one of those roles. But, yeah, there's a track record with Heinemann and Remedi, and I don't know why that was broken up. I don't know. The only thing is I'm trying to connect the dots, and this is total speculation on my part, is just that maybe you felt like Adams could cover more ground than Remedi, and you needed to cover more ground for Heinemann right now. I don't know if that's the case. I do think Adams can cover more ground, but I like the Remedi-Heinemann pairing, and I don't know why they went away from that.
5 takes on the 5 stripes. Thoughts on the parallels to last season? We had a rough start, then there was the big players meeting, things turned around. I'm not on Team FDB out, but if we see another positive turnaround, I honestly don't know who to attribute it to, players or coach.
There's some similarities, but again, last season didn't go in a straight line like that either. I've seen that said a lot today, and the team started in a way because of the Escobar injury. Then it went to a fourth. It started 3-4-3. Then it went to 4-3-3 after Escobar was back, and you could play a line of 4. You weren't getting enough numbers forward. There were problems with that. You had the game in Seattle where your 2 outside backs were injured. You couldn't play a line of 4. You didn't have a line of 4. So what you did is you added another center back against Houston on short rest, and then you played Justin Merrim at wing back. You couldn't play him at left back. It's one thing to play a player out of position on a four-man back line. You don't have as much cover. When you're talking about a 3-5-2, which you could also call a 5-3-2, you can play a player out of position as a wing back more comfortably because they have more cover. Justin Merrim as a left wing back was risky. It worked for a while, but that's not the same as playing him as a left back. You didn't have a left back. You didn't have a right back. Shea had injured his knee. Ambrose was injured. Bello was injured. Escobar was suspended for that Houston match. So you had to find a solution. You'd already said that Julian Gressel was not a right back, and I agree. I don't think he is. So you didn't have outside backs. You could not play a line of four. You went to the 3-5-2 that sometimes played like a 3-4-3. It wasn't just because of a players' meeting. That needs to be understood, and that's some revisionist history in this. The 3-5-2 opened the game up for players more. Yes, it did. And there were conversations going throughout that because both sides talked about it. Players and Frank DeBoer's mentioned it many times. But you also had a need based off availability. You could not play a line of four against Houston. It was impossible to play with any security whatsoever. Gressel would have been at right back. I guess you would have put Merrim at left back. He would have probably been exposed in that game. Having three center backs where you had a little bit of depth gave you more cover. That factored into it, too. More than anything, you were over halfway into the season last year. You knew the players more. You knew what they could do more. You knew what buttons you could push more. You knew what you could change more easily. Right now, you don't know those things. It's harder right now to do that, but it's more necessary right now because of the Joseph injury and because of your lack of firepower going forward. So it's a tougher conversation this year because of everything new that's happening to it. But it wasn't a straight line last year either.
We've still got a lot of stuff left on Twitter. Trust me.
Ay, Dios mío.
FC Cincinnati has just put out a tweet saying the match officials asked our coaching staff to change to avoid confusion with Red Bull's black jerseys.
What were they wearing? The blue? Oh, the blue with the blue and black. Yeah, that would do it.
And so, but they finished their tweet by saying, but let's be clear, there's no confusion where we stand, hashtag Black Lives Matter.
Okay, yeah, no, that part's awesome, but yeah, because that was maybe mixing something in that didn't necessarily need to be mixed in that confused me for a second.
Yeah.
Okay. Bernd Dursberger, a couple more things on Twitch before we go, since we have a little bit more time. Bernd said, and this is good information because I did not know this. Bernd, I'm assuming, follows Notre Dame soccer. And he said, by the way, Gallagher played right center back for us once against Cal State, February of 19. Wait, what? I'm confused. February of 19. Okay, Bernd, I need more information because I'm confused. But I did not know he had ever played either right or left center back. He did last night, and he still popped up as a center forward sometimes. And he brought what the team needed at that point. So, Bernd, before we go, I need clarification because I'm confused. Shooter McGavin, thanks for hanging out, Shooter. Oh, sorry, Shooter. I didn't mean to diminish the New England Revolution. Shooter says, we are your rival, too. I want revenge. Get it together and make the playoffs so you can get bow-bombed. We'll do our best, Shooter. I make no guarantees this year.
I will be avenged.
We are your rival, too. Shooter's still my favorite. Sorry, everybody. Gustavo, FDB is a respectable coach, but he's not a charismatic guy. That is true. Some people will always think he needs to be sent in the first flight available to Amsterdam. That is also true, and I don't think that's fair. He has a very different personality than Tata Martino did. But there's something that gets said about that is always incorrect. He is a different personality. That part's no denying it. But there was an idea that maybe it's just because of the age, maybe it's just because of the way he played it, because he played it. Tata Martino as the kind grandfather. That ain't the case. Mm-mm. And if you know anything about his playing history and you know anything about his time at Newell's Old Boys, he's not a kind grandfather type. Mm-mm. And Julian Gressel said it last year, and it flew under the radar, never got talked about. I don't know why. About Frank DeBoer being around more than Tata Martino, and always being there to chat, and always being around. The impression is the other way, but it's not the case. I do think Frank is a very different type of personality, and just like we're seeing on the field with personality, it does affect the way you feel about different people. And without knowing him, you're only seeing what's being portrayed, and it's different. It's different. I don't know if the perception's fair. I don't think it is. Burned, I'm still waiting for clarification. You might have to send it to me via email, and that's completely cool, because I want to know what you're saying about Gallagher playing center back against Cal State in February of 19. That doesn't click. I'm confused. Let me see if there's anything else I have to get before we go, because we're about to kick off, and my voice is about to go, and I am hungry and tired. No, I think that's it. Chico doesn't want to sign Deion Sanders for Adam John.
Okay.
Jurgen Dahm might be that with his speed.
Yeah, really?
That's going to be different up top. And he hasn't typically played as a number 9. I would not be surprised to see him there. We'll finish with Chico saying that we miss Parkey. Larinowitz, the only veteran player besides Kazan. We miss Parkey's presence. I think Parkhurst physically, it showed last year. The speed was an issue. And it was time for everybody to do what they did. I think he was ready to go. He was ready to move on with his life. And I don't know if he'd be playing with this group. You missed his presence in the locker room for sure, because that was a vital part of last year, even when he wasn't on the field. You do need Jeff Larinowitz to be impactful because of his veteran experience. And I think he needs some help in terms of leadership. It can't all be on Jeff. And for Brad as a goalkeeper, it's a different conversation. You need a leader, I think, in that midfield or that back line. And somebody's got to emerge into that. If it's Meza when he gets comfortable, maybe it is. Maybe that's one of the things that's affected it right now. Maybe he's a little quieter at the moment because he's got a lot going on in his life. Not seeing your wife or kids, and I don't think they're in the country because of this. That's tough. That's really tough. So, maybe he's not who he was at the beginning of the season. Miles is not a outspoken, loud guy. Franco could be. I think Franco could emerge into a captain kind of player at some point, but he's still young. So, Jeff needs some help with it. Brad needs some help with it. You need another leader to emerge. You need to get healthy. You need to figure out what the rest of the season is going to be. Thank you. Byrne was mentioned the friendly in preseason against Cal State Fullerton. There you go. That's a good one. Man, good shout. I need you to do my notes before games. Thank you, Byrne. I did see the Cal State Fullerton game, I think we did that with the Cholos game, and I just completely forgot about it. Because you saw Mikey Ambrose as a center back in that, and I forgot that Gallagher was. Good shout. Byrne Dursberger wins the Golden Star today. Winner. And Shooter's still my favorite because he wants to avenge us, because he wants the New England Revolution to have a rival. It's very nice.
Fife, drum, and flag.
And we'll see what happens in this one. Cincinnati Red Bulls, who you got?
I've got Red Bulls, probably 1-0, not the most exciting thing on the planet.
I got Red Bulls 3-1.
Okay.
Some silliness as the game goes on, because I think Red Bulls are going to have to find a way to play with the ball at their feet a little more than they're accustomed to, but I think they're better than what Cincinnati has on offer. I think Cincinnati will find a goal, but I think Red Bulls will find 3. Late game, it's Colorado and who am I forgetting? Minnesota. What you got?
I'll go Minnesota 2-0.
Minnesota 2-0. I think Colorado's going to be out to kick people all over the field if they can. I think they're angry. I don't think that's enough to win.
Ooh.
But I'm going to go with 2-1 Minnesota.
Minnesota's jumped to plus 122 from almost being even when the show started.
Oh, wow. And pulling up the schedule real quick because I can barely remember much at this point. Chicago, Vancouver in the morning. Who you got?
Minus 182, Chicago. Vancouver plus 445.
Who you got in that one?
Oh, God. Chicago 2-0. Vancouver can't score, and so not happening. No, Chicago.
Chicago 4-1.
Okay.
So, no, it's the early game. They're going to be asleep. Never mind.
I got the Heat, and I'm like... Yeah.
Never mind. It would be a 4-1 if it was the 8 o'clock game. It'll be... It'll be 2-1. It'll be weird, but Chicago will be
Okay.
in complete control.
Ali Adnan with the goal.
No, it'll be Jordi Reyna.
Okay.
All right, that's it. I'm delirious. It's time to go. I'm gonna eat some dinner, and I'm gonna stop talking because tomorrow I'll be on 92.9 The Game with Andy Bunker from 10 to 2. I know we have Brian Jordan hanging out with us talking Braves as we get ready for Braves opening day on Friday. We'll be talking a lot of Atlanta United. We'll have the AMA at 1:40. All kinds of other shenanigans. I still need to learn how to play the role of Randy McMichael because he does things that I didn't know he did. So I got to learn the words and change it around and make it mine.
You're going to bring a cigar with you and smoke it in the
No,
studio?
I can't do that. That's not going to happen. I'll get kicked out of the studio for that. But I got to find a way to make the Randy McMichael role my own tomorrow. So I've got a few ideas. We'll see what happens. We'll see how squirrely I'm feeling in the morning. So 10 to 2 on 92.9 The Game. We'll be back at 6 o'clock tomorrow to talk about the games from today, to talk about more stuff because we didn't get to everything, and to try to figure out what's going on. We'll do our best. Have a good night, everybody. Mucha plata, y'all.
Which part, yeah?